a loud track. It's a good song, though. It's a good song. All right, I'm gonna head over. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Dork Tales Expo, panel number 1. I am your panel moderator for the foreseeable future, at the very least. My name's Kelly. I use he and him as my pronouns. I'm usually the dungeon master, storyteller, game master, mother in the upcoming Alien game, which will be weird. I've never considered myself a mother, but that will be interesting. Of Dork Tales here, and as some of you have noticed, I have turned on emotes so that you can now spam visual emotes on the screen, as well as pop-ups. I'll be adjusting those so that they're a little less crazy during the actual event. But yeah, I thought it'd be kind of fun for this. There was an emote explosion that just happened. It was weird. So anyway, hi folks, how's it going? We're going to be starting the event very shortly, but first I'm going to pass around so that everybody can say hello. Why don't we go in a big circle? So Christine, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and yeah.
Well, hi there. I'm Christine. I use she, her pronouns. I am in far too many games.
False.
Currently, Shards, Witchlight, Mage, right?
Yes,
Did I
which
miss
is
one?
almost enough.
I've been in a lot of history, like ones from the past too. I don't know. I don't know what to say because I didn't prep this because I forgot
That's
that you would
fair.
probably ask us to do this.
That's okay. That's okay.
So, I don't know.
So why don't we just pass it
admin.
along? You're an admin.
Do history stuff.
You're a history person. You're lovely. Let's pass this over to Robin then.
Hello everyone, I'm Robin. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns, and I am second gen gamer in the chat. Christine is Lady Liliana, if you want to talk to us. Yeah, I'm in quite a few Dork Tales things. I'm in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Yes, why am I thinking it's the other way around? My brain is done. Wild Beyond the Witchlight, Call of the Netherdeep, Shards of Nirn for now, and Mage when it comes back this week.
That's true.
Next week.
That's true. All right, let's head down to Tasha. Hey, Tasha.
Hello, I'm Natasha. You can find me here on Twitch and all over the internet at Natasha Tuskovich Designs. Yeah, I love RPGs. I've been playing in them and running them for a while now.
Nice. All right, pass over to James.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I am James. I use he, him pronouns. And I'm actually currently, I think I'm not in any Dork Tales things right at the moment, but I do a couple things on other channels, and I certainly turn up on these ones.
You're in Deadlands.
Oh yeah, Deadlands. How did I forget about Deadlands? Never mind.
No idea.
It's been a long week. It has been a very long week.
It absolutely has. All right, and finally, Amy.
Hello. Hi, I'm Amy. I use she, her, they, them pronouns, and I can be found on Twitch at twitch.tv/paradoxicalghoul. That's me in the chat. Hi. And
Nice.
yeah, I've been playing games for many, many, many years, love them a lot, and I like to talk about them. And I like to talk in general, so that's why I'm here.
Nice.
Which, speaking of DorkX,
thank you very much for the donation, Chandra.
I did decide to wear my my merch from last time.
Yeah. Me too. Look how red it is. It's not even supposed to be red. It just is. So, folks, today we are starting. Dork Tales Expo, which is a 3-day-long event that we keep losing the chat because I keep refreshing to update some of our chat commands. I normally don't use like emotes and pop-ups and stuff like that outside of like Extra Life, but it's a con. Let's have some fun. This is a 3-day-long event where we celebrate tabletop role-playing games, discuss what you can do in your own games to make your lives better and to have more fun. This panel is a welcome as well as a so you want to be a DM or a GM or a storyteller panel where we're going to talk about tips, tricks, and things that make being a DM fun. We also can take direct questions from the chat, and for some reason our Wava thing is still our donate link, but that's fine. I will adjust that shortly. But yeah, so we're gonna hop into that. We've got tons of panels all week. This one is 2 hours long, or an hour 45. After this, we have love Love, Sex, and Consent in Tabletop Role-Playing Games with some guests from our friends over at Tabletop Titties. We also have another panel at 9 p.m., which is Grief and Death in Tabletop Role-Playing Games with one of our friends from Blackwater D&D, who is a actual professional counselor coming. And we're going to talk about... so today's a little bit of a serious day. Let's start off a little bit silly. Because today we are going to be talking about just getting into role-playing games and how that works for you. And the things you can do. So first of all, what do you think, everybody? Like, what's a good starting question for us to start with on this? Anybody in the chat has one?
I have a question. Why would I want to be a DM?
That's because sometimes nobody else will, is the easy one. So the meme of the forever DM is something that is definitely has some validity to it. Looking at forever DMs in general, let's see, looking around this group right now, I am, thank you so much, Dazed Apricot, for that donation. I really appreciate it. So right now, let's see, I'm a forever DM by choice. I vastly prefer running to playing. Christine, you've ran a bit of stuff. You're mostly a player. Robin, you've ran a couple of one-shots. Tasha, you've started running a lot more since you moved back east, haven't you? You're pretty much the de facto DM of your like household, right?
Yeah, I like both running and playing. So I really like running because I like telling stories.
Exactly. So, and Amy, you've DM'd a few times, and James, you also have been a forever DM, particularly like when you were in high school, especially.
Oh yeah. I haven't been doing as much recently, but that's for other reasons. But
I mean, that's also life, right?
Life,
like,
right?
It's harder to commit to this type of stuff when you get older, particularly like, unless you make it your job.
Scheduling players.
Scheduling players is a nightmare. We're going to talk about some tools and tips for that as well. Let's put scheduling on the list. So why would anybody be a DM? Who wants to hop in on that first?
Honestly, it's kind of fun.
There we go.
You get to control things.
You get to control stuff. You get to know what's coming, which is very enjoyable. I did a little bit, but it was not easy to keep the schedule up, and I'm not good with coming up with stuff wholesale. I'm comfortable running a module, but when the module has issues, it starts to feel a little overwhelming when you're looking at trying to figure out how to fix those issues to keep the game running. And you kind of want to...
I've always really enjoyed the creative challenge of it, like especially when the players don't go the direction you expect them to, and then you're suddenly like, all right, I guess we're winging this, or I need a little bit of extra mystery here, or something unexpected happens and you have to kind of roll with it. And I like that kind of flexibility and exploring that. It feels really good when it plays out well. It crashes and burns sometimes, but that's the nature of it.
Nice. I really got into it with the the James Bodash story, running My Little Pony, but then thank
you very much, Taryn, for the donation of $40.
Thank you, Chaos Wifey.
Yeah, I really like the collaborative nature of it, like getting to you have an idea for what you're trying to present, and then but based on how the individual players, what their ideas are, it can end up going in different directions, and it can become something so much more than what you originally envisioned.
Absolutely. Robin, you were kind of starting to say something like that, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I was saying I like being able to look at things. I liked for the Extra Life game that I ran, that was like a tournament, and I still have the notes of the encounters I made. I really enjoyed flipping through different monster and creature books and reading stats, and basically I liked that behind the screen kind of aspect where you're like, ooh, this is what DMs have. Hey, ooh, what can I do to have fun with my players, give them a fun time? So I found that's what I kind of had.
Then you need tabs.
Yes.
So many tabs.
So many tabs. They're just everywhere on the floor.
Which makes my little office worker heart very happy. I love office supplies.
I didn't used to use tabs. They really have been a godsend. All right. So there is chaos here. So, okay. Anybody else have anything they want to toss in there?
I think it's just kind of fun, and it's fun if you have a generous personality. It can be really, really fun because you are making an experience for everybody else. You are the reason, in a lot of ways, that they're having a good time.
I can absolutely.
There's a part
see
that's
that,
the players, but you're generating it. You're giving them the setting to have fun in. You're doing all that, so it feels kind of like here you go, have fun.
Here's some treats for you, like.
And you're you
totally do that. Cool.
It's true. Like a lot of my early life before I actually started pursuing my main career was in hospitality. Actually, I started working in restaurants and then hotels when I was young, and like put myself through most of my 20s and my late teens working in hotels. And like some of these were high-end places. You know, a lot. I've helped out a good couple dozen proposals. You know, like spreading like heart-shaped rose petal arrangements on like on beds for people who were in their honeymoons, secret champagne deliveries in the middle of the night while they were out having a smoke, like stuff like that. And it's, for me, it's the exact same thing. Like the joy that I took out of helping set up something cool that doesn't happen in normal life is the exact type of passion that I personally bring to role-playing games, and also the satisfaction I get from it. Like, I love making things happen and being a facilitator, and a lot of times being a dungeon master or a game master is kind of like being the host of a party. Anybody who's thrown a party, particularly like a party with a theme, you know what I'm saying. Like, it's the exact same thing. And anybody who has ran a LARP and also been on a party planning committee knows that they're both the worst thing ever.
I feel the party comparison so hard.
Right? It's
and also just getting people to show up.
Just getting people to show up. You know what? Let's jump into this. Okay, let's talk about the skell, the skell that is scheduling. The hell that is scheduling. Okay, players are awful. Players are the worst thing ever. Because you have to depend on a bunch of people with the same social skills as you, whatever that is, to make time and show up at events. And it's bad. Like, I started role playing back when phones were T9, like texting.
Oh yeah.
And like we didn't have smartphones in my day, but God, it was even more of a nightmare back then. And like, cause like people just would not show up to games back in like the mid 2000s, and you had no way of contacting them unless they popped on like MSN Messenger or something, right?
Or that one time one of the players disappeared to a certain glacier.
Yeah, so I was running a LARP, folks. I was running a LARP, and one of my players, my friend Alan, did not show up. And this was a specific game because he had taken enough Paradox being a metaphysical punishment for overuse of magic that does things to you. And in this episode, he had just had a bunch of it go off the previous game, and I decided I was going to turn him in. I was going to do something to him. I'm not sure if what I did to him was based on him not showing up. But he didn't show up to the game, and it was a big deal because the game was supposed to be all about his character that night. It was spotlighting him. We'll talk about spotlighting in a minute. So I call him, and I get through on the 6th call because I'm like, I need an answer. Why aren't you here? And he's like, sorry, I can't hear you. I'm on a glacier. And I say, what? How are you on a glacier? He goes, oh, well, there was a class trip. Because, you know, I'm an earth and ocean science guy. He was on a glacier in the Pacific Ocean doing schoolwork when he should have been at my damn game. It's awful.
That's hilarious.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I turned him into a
one down
poodle.
for a while.
You turned him into a poodle.
I turned him into a poodle. So his character got the paradox went off and turned him into a poodle. And there's a chance that he knocked up another player's dog.
Oh.
I was like 20 when I did this.
Oh boy. Do
not recommend that in 2022. But it was funny in 2010 or it was 2007 or something like that. Like it was during the weird stage of our development as a people. I love that Amy sent a message that said, this wasn't Alan, was it? It's like, yup, absolutely was Alan. I hope Alan's doing well. I can't hear you, I'm on a glacier is a great excuse. So scheduling. What do you guys do for scheduling? Because I gotta admit, even running Dork Tales, we've got, between our social medias, we've got close to 8,000 followers. We have people watching our shows in the hundreds. you know, we have regular games with professional quality that we try to bring to y'all, and I still have players that don't show up sometimes, or have to like, or get the call 10 minutes before game that's like, oh, I'm stuck in traffic, or oh, you know, because as much as we'd like to be, we're not Critical Role. We don't have, this is not a full-time gig for everybody. This isn't like a studio that we all show up at. We don't get to make enough money to take the day off to go record every time, right? What do y'all do to help scheduling? Anybody jump in. Like, because I use calendars religiously. Like, I use like my Google Calendar or my phone calendar, which they're the same for me, but I use that constantly.
Yeah, I think first off, like, there's always going to be the you can't deal with it aspect of it. Like, there's going to be emergencies and stuff like that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, life happens, but it's like beyond that, I'd say, is where our discussion really kind of starts.
Absolutely. And the thing is, if your players are having something happen, or if you know something's up, be charitable. My number one rule for role-playing games is you should run them for your friends. Unless you are a paid dungeon master who is running at a community center or a comic shop or a game shop or something like that, run games for your friends if you have friends. Don't run games for people you don't like. A lot of people, when I was younger, I ran games for a lot of people who I really didn't like because they were part of a friend group. And I felt kind of peer pressured into it. And don't run for people that you don't care about. And care about the people that you run for is the number one thing. Like, if you have a player that is having like a life event, be charitable and be like, oh, that really sucks. It's okay. And make a concession. Like, we run without you, or you know, I'll play you and I'll just won't have anything bad happen to you for the night or something like that. And we'll talk more about that later, because there are some pitfalls there where people will, I can already hear the comment section saying, but what if someone skips a game so their character doesn't die because we're going into a big battle, and then if you make them invincible when they're not there, then they can't die. I've had this happen before, particularly in LARPs. Yep, particularly in live action games where people knew they were going to get punished for something, so they didn't show up. I've also played in games where I was told, this happened to me once, where I was told before the thing that it was just going to be a little casual meeting, like an out-of-character meeting, with like me and like one of the narrators, so like the co-DMs. And I sat down and they're like, oh, why don't we just like talk through like what would happen in this scene? And it turned out that they were like secretly running a game for me to kill off my character. It was
What?
weird. Yeah, this is a character I've been playing for like a year and a half in a LARP. It was weird, man. And there were like a bunch of caveats where it was like, well, I'm here with like my entire team. And they're like, yeah, but you're just here right now. I'm like, yeah, but we're literally like traveling around in a van together. Like the Scooby Mystery Party with fangs. Like, they're literally right there. Oh yeah, but they're not here right now. But they're literally 10 feet away from where this meeting would hypothetically be. It was a weird time, guys. It was a weird time. Yeah, but don't play with jerks. But what about everybody else? What do you do for scheduling?
I would say probably what I've noticed, because I'm quite new to the Dork Tales thing. I think, again, life happens, but I would say, I think like keeping the momentum is trying not to have like more than one game. Like trying, like if you decide not to run for a player, trying to have a makeup game or the next game not constantly get pushed back, because then that's how I've noticed games go to die is by constant cancellations, because you lose the momentum in a game. And I think that's like probably a huge problem for a lot of DMs, I would say, is trying to get out of that momentum loss.
It's true. And I'm drifting. Every DM has like their weaknesses and stuff too. Like, you're gonna find DMs that are really good at keeping things going and keeping schedule and keeping on top of people. And it's difficult. I think that momentum loss is something that really we need to talk about in a bit. Tosh, what's up?
Yeah, I'd say and this doesn't really work for like obviously streaming games, but in real life, like being able to run if you're only missing one person makes such a difference, versus like otherwise half the time you can't keep going because it's like, well, there's always one person who can't make it that week.
Okay, why don't we tell you what? Let's talk about that. So the number one thing that seems to happen in role-playing games is the person who can't make it or is late. So why don't we go around in a circle and or just anybody pop in, we'll popcorn it. what is your preferred method, either that you've seen or that you would use personally, of running a game when someone's not there? Because there's the obvious one of you cancel game until everyone's there. I've done it on big events. I prefer to only do it for big events. What does everybody else like? What works for you?
I feel like it depends on what's going on at the moment and who's missing. If they're just going to be late, then you could just kind of try and let some RP happen before they show up, and then can join in and you can go off and fight whatever. But also just writing them out for a scene in a way that doesn't overall harm the character, but the character's taken out for a short period.
Okay.
I always operate with a one character down policy, right? So if I have one person out, we run, and if it's 2 or more, then I hold. But I usually run 4 players, so that's like half the cast gone.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I've in the past I've done half cast games where only half the characters would show up, and then I'd run a side adventure for them, and that can be a lot of fun too. But you got to be prepared for it. You gotta not be going to fight the big bad. You can't go fight Vader with only 2 people. Unless you're a Skywalker, in which case you only do it with 1. So I don't know. What else? What?
But even on the note of scheduling, one of the things that helps also is regularity.
Yeah. So
if it stays regular, it's that much easier for people to mentally remember when they're planning their week or when they're being asked to do something. Oh shit! No, Wednesdays are bad for me, or something like that. No, I've already have something on Wednesdays. It's always Wednesdays. No.
And this is my big problem. So on Dork Tales, we do a lot of weekly scheduling. I mean, we have a couple of games on the weekends that are bi-weekly, right? And we have Vampire, which is once a month, this is the paradox of the human mind. It is easier for players to remember that Vampire the Requiem is the first Wednesday of every month than it is for them to remember that, I'm picking on people, that Deadlands is every other week. There's something about that, the first Wednesday, that it's such a rare occurrence that you're more primed to try to not forget it. I think where you're like, oh, I can't miss that one because it's the beginning of the month. It's right after Rent. I get my blood sucked, and then I suck blood. But bi-weekly is the absolute worst. I have never had more players forget about games than bi-weekly schedules. Like, it just falls out of their brain. Tosh.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like bi-weekly is fine until it gets derailed the first time. As soon as one of them is skipped, and now it's like, it's the next week, or even worse, now it's a month later. Like, it's impossible at that point. But as long as it's consistent, bi-weekly is fine. But it just gets derailed so quickly.
Bi-weekly is really, we used to do bi-weekly like all the time when Dork Tales was starting out. We would do Shards of Nirn every other week, and then we would do Hunter the Vigil every other week on Wednesdays, because like that was back when I was still in school and wasn't doing this full time. And that was okay, because like about a third of the cast was in both games. Like Christine was in both of them, and Kat was in both of them. So like that worked out pretty well. But sometimes it would just be like one of the players who was only in one of the games would just go, oh crap, I have, it's the magnet for family gatherings and weddings and funerals, and like everybody dies, gets married and has kids on the same day, and it's the day you're trying to run game.
Yeah. I mean, I swear by my Google Calendar that I need reminders. I need pop-ups to come up at certain times, and with those are things you can really schedule when shit pops up on your phone to say, hey, don't forget this week is this. It's gotten to the point where it's not as useful anymore, at least for Dork Tales stuff, because generally I'm in a weekly game, and it's certain nights I know are just not free for me. They're Dork Tales.
Nice.
So it's much easier, but other times it was definitely like when it was only like once every 2 weeks you had one game. It was kind of hard to remember sometimes among all the rest of your life.
So, anybody else have any other techniques for taking characters out?
So, well, also, I just asked because Saffron in the chat said that they've been running it by the same campaign bi-weekly for years. So I just asked, I said, any tips? And she says, which might be an interesting thing, is Google Calendar and make a Facebook events every week and tag the people that they know don't check it.
So
which could be interesting to remind people, but that takes a lot of onus on the DM to manage their players.
I used to do Facebook events for every Dork Tales game, but it just became
Yeah.
too much once we started running more than twice a week. But yeah, no, it's a really good, like, whatever social platform you use, hammer people. But only you got to be careful not to do it so often that they mute things, because we've got, like, the Dork Tales team has like a 20-person team chat for like all of the regulars, and I know like a third of the people have that thing muted because, you know, some random night people will talk about Facebook Marketplace stuff for an hour and a half and flood it with 200 messages, and then I'll be like, what the shit? And look at it. So you got to be careful not to overrun it. But what, anybody else have any ideas for keeping so your player doesn't show up? What do you do?
Plus, because like half people aren't even on Facebook anymore, and it's like, oh well, what service are you on? And it's like, well, I'm on WhatsApp. Well, I'm on Instagram. It's like, oh my god, finding one platform that everyone's on is difficult now.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of them use Discord. A lot of people use Discord, which is nice, and it's free,
yeah.
and it works. Like, it's a really good program. But I can see why people might not want to constantly have their Discords open. Because I mute the hell out of mine too. My personal suggestion for players that don't show up is, for one, limit the number of times they can do it without a good reason. Like, you're the arbiter of what a good reason is. But unless they just completely, if they keep persistently flaking on you without any explanation or any check-in or anything like that, give them like a 3-strike policy is my personal idea. And also, as G Stein in the chat just said, they check in on their players, and like, if I'm ever unsure, I'll usually send like a little poke to the group that's like, all right, we all good for today, tomorrow, next Saturday? Like, I just sent one out for Deadlands because we're running Deadlands next Sunday, and it's Mother's Day, and I'm like, crap, okay, are we running Deadlands? Do people need to be with their mothers in the middle of the day? My mom lives in Kansas, so like, I'm fine. Like, I'm good. I'm not flying down for Mother's Day. And like, my phone calls in the morning, so I should be good. But you got to double check with people. And it's one of the good things of having proactive groups is a lot of times, like, I won't get the chance. Other people will have done it for me. But actually, in the games, I like doing the robot replacement. Like, they are replaced by as a brain dead NPC for the evening, or they're having an off night. Like, Krista couldn't make it the other night because she had some life stuff that came up regarding her move. So her character Isaac fell into a pond, got wet and pissy, and refused to talk to anybody for the rest of the game. Which he's a lion man. It makes sense, okay? He was just, and occasionally I'd have him just mutter something in the background because I know how Krista plays him. I can at least get it half right. Let's talk about, someone asked in the chat earlier about convincing people how to run a game. So, 3 of you do not run games very often. How do I convince you to run a game? How do Natasha, James, and I convince the other 3 of you to run a game?
I mean, do little one-shots. That's how you got me into it, and I've been like, hey, if you have free time, I'm interested in giving a little baby test out of a game for like a 5-session kind of little mini arc to try out DMing, because I had tastes, little bitty tastes for Extra Life, and then it kind of was like, oh yeah, this is something I actually enjoy. I like having a little bit of that power and that, you know, kind of controlling the story a little bit. So I think it's just giving people a chance, and like knowing your players and friends and who might want to do it, and say, hey, how about you do a non-cat, like totally cash, not serious, run this, want to try out a one-shot one time, it's not, you know, we're not gonna judge you, it's not gonna be fine, like, it, you know, why don't you try that out? And that's what got me.
True. Christine and Amy, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, giving suggestions, just asking, hey, I'm starting to feel really burnt out on DMing. Would you mind running? Or I really want to play. Do you want to try running 1 to 2 shot? Try it out, see if you like it.
See, people get really paralyzed by the idea of being behind the screen and doing any GMing or DMing or anything like that. But I think that people don't realize they've been training for it their entire lives. Human beings are natural storytellers. We're communicators, right? So the grand majority of people are primed to tell stories, and some of them tell them very badly. But that's fine. Like, you have to lean in on your strengths. I'm not particularly good at a number of facets of being a storyteller, and I'm a professional storyteller. Like, I'm a paid writer and a paid, like, game master, and I still can't set dress a room. I still can't. To this day, you'll walk into a room and I'll be like, it's a 10 by 10.
I don't know. I don't know. The LARP, like...
Oh, well, that's a physical space. That's a physical space where I can grab stuff and be like, I don't know, there's a column here. But that's like if I'm just like improving it off the top of my head, like, oh my God.
You're selling yourself there.
Well, then it stresses me the hell out. How's that? Tasha,
There we go.
You were going to say something, Tosh.
I was going to say, I think if it's someone who's never done it before, I know before I ever did it, I was so scared to try because it's just very amorphous. And I would say just run a game with them. Like, be like, hey, this is the game I'm going to run. Do you want to help me run it? Like, here's the story. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how, we're going to build, like, tell what type of characters they need to build, and like, just run it with someone, because it can just be so like terrifying to like start from scratch. But if someone's going to do it with you, then you can kind of be like, oh, and then what do we do here? And then, oh, I didn't know what to do there. And they can ask questions as they go without feeling like, I'm stuck. You players, I don't know.
So you definitely want to come back during our games that you should be playing panel, where we're going to talk about games that are not Dungeons and Dragons that give you a lot of options for how you run. So we've been passing notes back and forth in our chat here about some ideas, and what we're going to talk about today is tips, tricks, and tools that you can use to spice up your own game once you've got your footing. But there are a couple of things like getting past prep paralysis and just running the game. Tips and tricks for DMing in general, like materials we have access to, and how to make an adventure, how to make a story. So I think off the top of my head, there are a couple of ways we can talk about this. Number one is the easiest trick that new game masters should rely on, and it's counterintuitive because people get the Matt Mercer effect, right? They watch this and they see someone like Matthew Mercer, or this is going to sound really conceited, but like I get posts where people say that they like are holding me up to that degree, and they're like, oh, I don't know how he does this. I'm like, I don't know how I do it either. I just do it. But they look at people and they think that they're so much more prepared than they are, or that they're so much more what's the word I'm even thinking of here? Like
got so much more world building taken care of than what's actually going on behind the screen.
When so much of it is just on the fly.
Or that they're doing so much legwork themselves. And if you are a new game master of any kind, once you have a good relationship with your players and you know they're not going to try to be cheesy about it, make them do the work. I hate
make your players come up with their own stuff.
Make them come up with their own stuff. I hate designing sets. I can't do it. I can't visualize rooms in my head without drawing from past experience for some reason. So I have a standing rule at my tables where unless I'm running a module, where the modules are different because they're pre-written adventures, right? Like if there is a silver coin on a plate in a room, maybe there has to be only one silver coin. If there's two, maybe it'll break the story, right? But if that's not something you've planned for, ask your players, like, or have them be willing, or have an open conversation where they can suggest things to you. Like, all right, you all walk into a small room. It has a domed ceiling. It's about 10 feet wide by about 11 feet deep. You had to mix up occasionally. About 11 feet deep. And there is some staining on the ground. It's dark in here. There are no windows and no door. I mean, there's one door, right? For one, never be afraid to make mistakes and to correct yourself and be like, oh, wait, sorry. Okay, right? The number one piece of advice of any game, by the way, I'm just going to interject this real quick before I turn this over and we talk more about this room. You're running a role-playing game. You're not writing a novel. Novels get second, third, fourth, 16th drafts. Role-playing games don't. This is your first draft. First, if you were writing a novel on your first draft, do you know what that looks like? It looks like shaking your brain onto a piece of paper. It's greasy and ugly and awful. And a little beautiful, but it's messy. Every role-playing game is a first draft. Okay? Unless you're running the same game with the same people multiple times, like the same episode. If you're Groundhog Daying, then you have no excuse. Maybe it isn't. But like,
hey.
honestly... So
you should run a Groundhog Day episode.
I've been really thinking about it, but I'm
should.
not. But it seems like a lot of work. I think Taryn ran one of those for a while. I'm not sure. So what I would say in the room scenario though that we were just brought up was, okay, so you're in this room.
Is there a crate?
What kind of crate?
Like a wooden crate that I could try and open and see if there's anything in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, there's one by the corner right over here, and you know. Yeah, there probably should be a crate. This room is, let's say this room was at the bottom of a thieves' den or something like that. Yeah, there's probably a crate. What's inside the crate? Well, if I didn't prep this, I would suggest that, okay, there's maybe nothing magical in the crate. Maybe this is just a side room that I was like, oh, it's a storage closet. But if one of the players is like, oh, is there a crate? Well, yeah, there's probably a crate. That's a fair assessment. Okay, but they decide to open it. So what's in the crate? What's a fair thing to be in the crate? So it's a thieves encampment, right?
I don't know. Is there a rope and a grappling hook? Because I want to get up on that balcony over there.
Oh, well, there would definitely be rope. But I would say no to a grappling hook, except it is a thieves' place, so they got to keep their grappling hooks.
Nails I could bend into a grappling hook.
Exactly. So that's my initial thing. But we're in a thieves' house. Or a thieves, a thieves union, a thieves local 422, and so there's probably a grappling hook storage around there. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if this isn't like the basement of like a thieves' place, like is this like a finished basement? Like are the walls stone? Is it like?
Well, they're finished with it, but it's not finished. No.
Yeah. Okay. So there's not like hidden doors behind a bookshelf or something, or like a cabinet.
I mean, you haven't looked for any.
Okay, so if there's a cabinet against the wall or any
there is it's a credenza.
Okay.
Google it. I can't describe it.
No, I can't remember. I know what this is. It
was in that show with Paul Rudd playing the clone.
Also, I think that brings up a great point. Is
learn the word credenza.
That too, but also like especially for like even us with on stream, we say, okay, Kelly will like explain something and it doesn't quite click, and you can either reference like things from movies or even just Google is your friend. If you're like, okay, I know what I want to say, but I can't quite put it into words. Google is your best friend for looking up stuff, and especially like a casual table game, you can all just take a minute to Google credenza, which I'm also looking at right now.
I know absolutely know what it is. It's like a little like
it's a hutch.
Thing.
It's
yeah.
it's like
Yes,
it's kind of like a hutch, like Starsky and Hutch. Other things that are really useful tools, and we're gonna talk on tools in a sec, but like generators. I use generators all the freaking time. I have a binder of printed out generators, and dndspeak.com is like one of the best websites on the internet where they like just go there sometime. Just Google D&D Speak. It's either .com or .net, and they have hundreds of lists. Like, oh, you want like 1,001 gods? Here you go. You want like 1,001 types of alcohol? Cool, here you go. I use it all the time. I can't think up off the top of my head like what. I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. I really don't know what I'm having for dinner tonight. But I can't make up like a gourmet meal off the top of my head every single time consecutively. But somebody did, and they made it a generator. So like quail eggs roasted in cocoa with marzipan dressing.
Yeah, so the danger there is that you make everybody hungry.
Yeah.
I know. That's one of the number one comments I get is that I make people hungry.
You all the time.
Ugh.
I want to make people thirsty.
The last Shards game, I was like hungry and thirsty, and I'm like, I just ate dinner, but I'm still hungry because you're talking about yummy things.
There's a reason I snack through games a lot of the time.
Yeah. So, anybody have anything to add on to this part?
Yeah, I think just being willing to like lean into it. Also, a note I found that was really useful when I was running modules was having the image of the space up. So if they provided an image in the module to use that, But if you can find a picture of roughly what you want it to look like online, like there's
Yeah.
a lot of fantasy art and whatnot out there. So you can look for stuff like thieves' dens. Find one that fits what you kind of have roughly in your head and use it as a descriptive tool.
First is
Like-
great for that.
I find if you spend the time to do that, even if you don't even use them in the game, it really helps inspire you as like a DM. Because you kind of like you're like, oh well, that picture had like these hallways going off to the side, or had all these doors, or had like this on the walls, and then like even if your players aren't looking at it, it just helps like give you ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. James, you were going to add something a second ago. What was it?
I was going to say that going and looking up maps online really helps me. Like one of the things I like to do is I like to make maps, but like I'll go and look one up, right? Or just look at a couple of them and be like, okay, how exactly would a thieves group lay out their environment, right? You don't have to have answers for everything, but it's like if this is the basement of a thieves' den, well, who do you expect to see down there? Like, I mean, I would kind of expect maybe someone they've captured, right? Like, if they're going to interrogate someone, that's probably where that kind of thing might take place, right?
Mm-hmm.
It might be maybe there's an underground dock or something like that, so they can
There are tunnels.
Right, so there's tunnels and stuff like that, and if you go look at maps, you'll see people like kind of lay these things out, and map makers will go through and think about, okay, well, what's the purpose of this space? And once you have an idea of the purpose of the space, you can just kind of start listing off stuff that would be appropriate for that space, and don't be afraid to put out some mysteries, like some oddities, and that the people will latch onto, and then you can kind of write from there. So it's like
they will latch onto it.
Yeah, like I don't like
weird.
like you got the box with a single silver piece sitting on top of it.
Of an ancient currency that's no longer used here. It's from the previous government, the one that was overthrown when you were children.
Right, you just start making up stuff, right? Or
you pull it out of your butt.
Or maybe it's like a nice like trigger for a booby trap, right? Like because it's like the one piece that doesn't get picked up sitting out in the open in the bottom of a thieves' den. Maybe it's one of those things that they quietly don't mention to their own thieves that kind of deals with the ones that are too greedy, right?
I also feel like that leads into like having options though. If you have something like that that's a plot device and then your players can ignore it, or vice versa, they latch onto something that you had just made up and instead they're like there's the important things over there and you're like, okay, having options to like reroute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and also I know from being a player, quite often the descriptions of setting will inform how I play in a combat in that setting. So if I know that there's a half balcony running around the top of the room, like it's more decorative than anything, but it is a ledge or something like that, or it looks like it has a solid railing, I'm more inclined towards potentially being creative and sending somebody with a bow up there to hide behind the railing and snipe anything that comes in.
Wall-high walls, or waist-high walls, waist-high walls. And there's a rule that I love to use that I finally have named it, and it's the chandelier principle. Or the chandelier Bing. And what it is when in doubt, if the player asks, yes, there is a chandelier that they can swing on. Why? Because everybody wants to swing on a damn chandelier.
They do.
Is there so if there is if there's not a chandelier, what purpose does that serve the players if you're in if you're in like maybe the thieves' den, like maybe the chandelier is not on the wall, maybe it was stolen, but like if the players ask if there's a piece of the set that makes sense that should be there, I'm backstage at an opera, are there ropes? Yep. Is there a catwalk? Yep. Can we have a rope fight on the catwalk? Absolutely, with your cat character, Amy.
That was a fun map to make.
That was so much fun.
Thank you for making that. So, did anybody have anything else they wanted to add onto this? Because there was a question that I just was passed about. That's kind of a hard one, and it was by Saffron. So my neighbor just started running a game and asked me an interesting question. I'm curious of your answer. How do you handle when someone fails a check and then says, well, I'm just going to keep trying until I succeed? Whew. Now, this makes the most sense in D&D, where D&D's mechanics are more inclined toward that. There are a lot of engines that we play on the channel where you progressively can't. Like Call of Cthulhu, you can push your luck once. and then it's pretty much like you didn't do it, guy. And in fact, if you fail the second time, it's a botch. You can instate that rule in D&D. You can be like, yeah, like if there is a risk factor involved, like
you can try again with disadvantage.
Yeah, you know what? I think I just stated what my rule is, and it's a hard one because we like the click clacks. Don't have your players roll dice unless there is a consequence for failure.
That's exactly my way of handling it. I said in the chat, like, make it narratively interesting. Like, if something doesn't work, what goes wrong? Like, what actually didn't work? What happened? Not just like you tried to lockpick it and it didn't open. Like, okay, what else happened? Like, did you make a big noise? Like, did it crack? Did something else shift? Like, what happened? And make something be a consequence.
Exactly. I was gonna say it depends on what the check is. Because if you ask them to roll a perception check and then they're like, oh well, obviously I failed, I'm gonna keep doing it. It's like, no, you didn't notice the thing. Until something happens to change the setting where you could notice it again.
Yeah.
Perception.
Like, oh, you noticed.
You don't know that you missed that.
You're super interested in it. It's like definitely what you need to look at right now.
Yeah, I really like that. So I often am really bad at rolling successfully on like perception things, at least historically on certain characters. And I really appreciate that Kelly actually started like giving me like alternate like just things. So it wasn't just like, oh, I failed again. Oh, I failed again. Just in general.
The room is slightly, you notice that the room is slightly at an incline. It might not mean anything, but like your character's like, oh, I bet there's a trap door or something. I was gonna interject actually before you said that because D&D speak has 100 things to say when you fail a perception roll.
Beautiful.
Charts. And it's my favorite thing to look at because it's like you notice that the floor is slanted. I think is one of them. I totally stole that. Or you know, it's you feel like the portraits are watching you as you're walking through, and it's like these little details where you're like, it's cold in here, like unnaturally cold.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're really chilly, Robin.
So Saffron's updated it to say that her situation was them trying to wake up an unconscious person to interrogate them for the neighbor. I don't know. You could. How are they trying to wake them up? Maybe they're hurting them worse. Like if they're slapping them.
Why? It's like, yeah, if you're trying to wake someone up who's unconscious, it's part of me's wondering like, is this something that needs a roll for it? Like, will it resolve naturally, or is it like a medicine check sort of situation? Like,
yeah, because if you fail enough medicine checks, the person often, you know,
unless
just have something happen. Like, oh, what did you try to do to wake them up? Okay, well, what did that result in?
I think it would depend heavily on the situation. Like, if you're shaking the person, right? Like, and it's like, oh no, you know, we've got 4 rounds before something happens, right? Yeah. Then it's a whole like, then you're rolling for it, and maybe you won't succeed, right? Like,
yeah, but if you have plenty of time, does it need a roll?
No, I would say I wouldn't. I would just say you can just wait until the time comes. It's all right, Robin. We're all just like chatting, and you get your hand up.
No worries. I was just it's a good thing. I heard another technique that talking about the Matt Mercer and the Matt Mercer effect. One of the things I actually really like what he does is, okay, if someone fails a perception roll and someone else looks, what he does is he raises the DC. So he's like, you can try again, and each time you try, it's getting harder and harder until it's going to be impossible. So it's like, that's a potential way too as well. Like, if you want to give people another chance, it's like, well, just raise the DC. You have to be better than the person was before.
Yeah, because now you're distracted. Now you guys are all talking about this stuff that you saw, but it wasn't relevant.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's an old holdover from at least Pathfinder first edition, which is what Critical Role started as.
Yeah.
Every time you fail a check, I think it was up by like 2 or 5 or something like that. That's, if you want to keep trying it.
Yeah, something like
that. And then eventually you just can't because it's like DC 50. Like,
well, and sometimes when that starts happening because you're all running at a table or over something like Zoom or Discord or whatever, what you can start having happen is somebody fails a roll and somebody else goes, oh, well, I'll roll it too. It's like, no.
Yeah.
You weren't part of this. Butt out.
Monitoring, and a lot of that is really difficult to do to make sure that you silo your players when they're in different locations, because you can get a lot of different locations, particularly because you can get a lot of teleporting players are the worst, and that's a miscommunication between the DM and the player, or the player and the game, right? Something is keeping them from being in that moment, and you should try to address that. It's hard. Robin.
Another technique that I found interesting, for depending on, again, this depends on the check, but another podcast I listen to, NADPod, sometimes the DM has a group total that you have to make to like be able to work together. So you can add, okay, we need to get DC 40 for this. So everyone rolls perception or strength or something.
I got a 5.
Yeah, then, well, you better hope your buddy rolls a 24 with the barbarian. So it's like, that's an interesting way too. So then it's like the group stealth check kind of thing, where it's like, oh, we can do group ability checks. You have to get a high amount, and then you fail or pass.
Pooling successes, that's actually used in a lot of other role-playing games besides D&D, right? And I think that's a really great option to use. And also, when you're using, play other games besides D&D. This might be sacrilegious and you might be unsubscribing, but play them and steal the stuff you like, because D&D stealing the stuff it likes from other games. You think Advantage was in 4th ed? Nope. It's a great mechanic, and they stole it from, I think they stole it from like a Homebrew, actually, more than anything. But like a lot of stuff was borrowed from Pathfinder, and like a lot of stuff goes back and forth with other game systems. Like, do it. Everybody's got good ideas. We're all playing make-believe. So what else? Somebody else have something about that part?
You can take care of some of the most the more complicated, the most ones that get you abused that way a lot. For example, perception checks, right? You could move those into the DM's realm, where it's like the DM makes the rules for them. You have to make sure you got a good trust relationship with your players, but it can be like, I've got all of your perception checks. If you want to think you think it's something you want to perceive, you can be like, I'm going to do a perception check, but the GM rolls it. And so you don't know what happens behind the screen. It might mean that, walking down that hallway might be a little bit more intimidating.
Sorry, I'm looking. Tasha asked where this list is. I found it on Reddit. 100 useless items you find with investigation, and 100 useless people you find on a failed gather information check. So some of these are pretty great. Just Google them, Tasha. You'll find what you're looking for. So yeah, also people are saying I'll help, and they aren't anywhere near that person. I gotta say, there's one thing that bugs me. We're gonna save this for how to win at D&D, which is a slightly satirical panel where we talk about all the things you shouldn't be doing. The teleporting really bugs me, but nothing bugs me more than the I catch them.
I was just thinking you were going to mention that. Yeah,
I hate it. It is the thing I hate the most. I hate it over tardiness, and it's like one player. So like you got a couple players, right? And they're running from rooftop to rooftop because you're being chased by goons, right? And like the fall will hurt, but it won't kill you, right? But one of the players gets like, you need a 15 on the check. They get a 16, so they're like, they jump between the buildings, and then the next one is like, and gets like a 1, and falls. And the other player goes, oh, can I roll to catch them? Well, were you not jumping? Like, did you jump, pause, go, oh, yes. My friend, allow me, right? And it's like, I hate it.
Like, if you're in an action scene and you're actively doing something and, like, you're all trying to run and jump at the same time, you're all essentially acting at the same time. Like, if you're jumping, you're not paying attention to what they're doing. You're paying attention to, oh my god, am I landing? Right?
I think just reminding that.
Yeah, just reminding people of that. And then, but that's different than if you're, say, you have time and you have a gap and someone goes across and then is waiting and is like, okay, I'm going to get ready to catch you in case something happens. That is different.
Now, in D&D, I would allow it under certain circumstances. Yeah. Such as, okay, so James, you and Amy are running between buildings. Amy, you make the jump. James, you botch.
It should be James making it.
Both of you roll like
the
shit.
Two of us, we're both terrible. Yeah, no.
Okay, okay, fine. So James, you and Christine are running. Christine, you make the jump, and Christine, you know better than to do this. But if you said, oh, can I catch him? And in D&D, I might say, okay, but the guys chasing you get an opportunity attack with their guns or their bows or something, because you are pausing to lean over. Like, why should I not get a chance to shoot you? Like, there needs to be a cost if you people want to do this. So one of the tips and tricks that I'm going to suggest, I'll be right back. You keep going. I need my dice. I knew I was going to need my damn dice.
I would say that there is a slight nuance to this depending on the type of game you're playing. Like you're playing like a noir thing, sure, let them catch each other, because that could be like a very kind of think of anything out of like Dark City, or that could be very appropriate.
Or depending on whoever jumped first, how well they succeeded. If they really like stuck that landing, potentially, maybe they did do it well enough and did it fast enough. But yeah.
Like land it, like have thighs of steel. You're just like, oh no, grab, yank. Like if you nat 20 that stuff, and like you could end up with something ludicrous. But most
or
cases,
you're in a superhero game or something.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Also, what kind of tone is the game? Like, is it kind of more comedic? Is it really serious? Like, if someone misses that fall, are they going to die, or is it going to be funny? Like,
is this the final game? Yeah. Could this be the epic death, or they could show back up later? Like, then maybe let it
deck save, or you both go over.
Exactly,
or let them
right?
Try.
Deck save. Okay, but if you fail, you both fall, right?
Or let them try, but have the DC so high it's impossible.
Or not impossible, implausible. A 19 or 20. Two things about rolls. Never make your players roll for something that is impossible.
Yeah.
You may let them roll for something that is impossible. Never make them roll it. That being said, never make your players roll for something that's irrelevant, or you're going to get a community you'll develop an environment at the table that is all about the dice and all about forcing rolls, and that's not what you're here for. So one of the things that we were talking about is raw versus cooked rules, I guess. So rules as written, or rules of the table, house rules. Everybody has house rules. Anybody who says that house rules are bad is wrong, I guess, objectively wrong. House rules are customizing things to the way you like it. I mean, is there anybody here who always orders food without alteration 100% of the time? Right? Like, seriously, like, your role-playing games are the same. Sometimes you look at things and you're like, that's a dumb rule. For example, in Pathfinder and in what is it? I think it was in 3rd and 3.5 D&D, you'd have skills, and you would have skills that had their modifiers attached, but it wasn't suggested in the rules, to my memory, that you use alternate abilities to do it. So for example, if I wanted to now, people house ruled this all the time. Like, if you wanted to seduce someone using strength instead of charisma, because you are at, like, you're the biggest, sexiest orc here, right? And you're just flexing your muscles to attract babes or bros. Why not? But that's one of the things that is inside of 5th edition. It's very, very, very common there to use other ones. I think I used charisma history the other night, and someone had an aneurysm. They're like, how? And I'm like, because I don't know, you said you were a flirt at school.
It's the intimidation one that always got me, right? Like,
because you couldn't use strength.
Yeah, you couldn't use strength, right? Your barbarian is not able to intimidate people as well as the halfling bard.
And I think that comes down to, do you have a show of something, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you fall off that roof, James, you hit the ground 6 stories down, get up, brush yourself off, and glare at the guys who were chasing you, I'd give you a Constitution plus Intimidation. Because it's like, you know what? This ain't worth it. He's not going down. I mean, he's going down, but he's not staying down. Thanks very much, Chef.
Thank you, Chef.
Oh, thanks, Chef.
See, my brain just thought about like an intimidation check using dexterity. Like, what would that be?
Flexible.
Doing stippling the coin between your fingers, or playing with the knife.
Oh yeah, there you go.
The knife game.
Oh yeah, or throwing the knife and having it embedded like right beside them. So like,
yeah. Good, awesome.
Eating your own head in front of someone. So
what?
I don't know. So if you're comfortable enough with the rules of your game, you can bend them or break them pretty easily. And I'm about to suggest something heretical that I use in my homebrew games. So all my homebrew games follow a principle of, we're here for fun. We're here to do whatever we can to make this story more enjoyable. I personally find, if we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons specifically, 5th edition D&D is hard to run challengingly. It is not particularly well balanced for encounters unless you're throwing a very specific, arrangement of enemies. Usually a lot of small ones and then a big one. Usually like there are very few where it's like, oh, you go fight the dragon and it's a 1-on-10 and it's a really good fight. You have to fudge. If you ever go watch Matt Colville's videos, he talks a lot about things from 4th edition that are great, that were largely in monster design. For example, if you go to fight a dragon, why shouldn't the dragon have an aura of fire? He's a red dragon that's been around for 1,000 years. Like, he's part magma at this point, right? Like, he should have, within 10 feet, you take fire damage. I have a house rule mechanic inside of our Elos games that dragons are incredibly dangerous. So much so that if a dragon kills you, or if a dragon knocks you down, your death saves all have disadvantage. If you are dragon wounds scar, and if you are killed by a dragon, it costs twice the amount to resurrect you. That hasn't come up yet, but it's because dragons kill you. They kill you good. And that's just a personal house rule. I feel, though, that it's often, especially on stream, you can see this when you watch some of the older episodes, until we got into Reign of Emeries, which is where I started evoking this rule that I'm about to talk about. I would not have as much fun with encounters, because it would be really easy. The players would come, they'd roll it over, particularly in our games where we do have determination and inspiration and things like that, right? And as a dungeon master, you don't have access to that. What you have access to is the number of minions that show up, which slows down the game, and you have access to cheating behind the screen. I try not to do that, because fudging dice rolls when we're not able to look at each other's dice, or I'm not able to monitor your dice, means that it's not as much fun, you know. Like, it kind of hurts the trust. So I came up with this option called the offer. Somebody else might have come up with it first, I don't know. I take a coin. Okay, a nice one. This one has a nice ridged edge. You can't quite see, but it's got a little dice on top of it. If the dice is up, that's the player's. If it's not up, it is mine. And what I do is I put it on the table. Visually, I tell all the players verbally that it is up, and when the offer is up, the players can ask for ways to bend the rules. Simple. I have a fly speed of 30. He's 40 feet away from me. Can I hit him? I don't see why not. I'm talking like Matt Colville now, I just realized. But yeah, I don't see why not. Maybe you get an adrenaline rush. You get that extra 10 feet. I don't care. That sounds great. Yeah, you want to? Or you are out of spell slots, but you want to try to cast a spell anyway? Sure, I'll let you do an Arcana roll to see if you can harness the energy or something like that. And then I flip the coin. No one else can access that coin until I cheat. And I usually use it like, okay, the monster gets an extra attack. Or say the monster has a bunch of actions, and one of them is like, you know, I don't know, body odor. There was one that I was using the other day that had like an aura of stink. But that's an entire action to use the aura of stink. But what if I wanted aura of stink and still go stab, stab, stab with my claws? Well, I got to pick one or the other. Well, with the offer, I don't. I use both, and then I flip it back. Right? And it's such an easy little mechanic where everybody gets a chance. There are some advanced versions of this we may be finding out in the future, which is to increase intensity. You can actually use this mechanic to increase the intensity of your scene. Later on in certain games, when we get into divine conflicts, and no spoilers, but it's happened once on camera during a finale game where they were fighting something way bigger than them. And the divine mechanics for the offer are slightly different. So normally it's player side up, DM side up, right? If you're fighting something that is divine or divine tiered, the way it works is I flip the coin over. If the coin is still flipped up the next time it comes to my turn, I can flip it again back to me. And basically I get to use it twice. So the players have to start using the offer, or else I get perpetual cheating, because I'm playing a god or something, and I want to keep the pressure on. The players should be doing things that are reckless. They should be doing things that shouldn't work, because if not, I'm gonna cheat hard. It's not cheating. We're all agreeing on what it is. Another thing that we're starting to implement in games on Dork Tales is something. Actually, it's funny. I heard that Wizards of the Coast is starting to investigate this for their own mechanics, and I'm hoping that we can get it out before they do. But hit dice are useless. Aside from, like, yeah, if you have short rests, you can use them to heal. What else do they do? I have started allowing hit dice and exhaustion levels to be traded for spell slots.
I like that use of useless stats.
Right? And it's like, there we go. Like, okay, so I need to... I have one spell left, and we're fighting the big bad. It's a fireball, and I'm going to upcast this thing at, like, I don't know, say I want to upcast it at 9th level, because fireball's a 3rd level spell. Cool. If I'm using the exhaustion variant, then it's cool. Take 6 levels of exhaustion. You will die. You'll get off a 9th level fireball. And it's like you're literally drawing your reserves. And it was a Bob the World Builder, I think, on YouTube. Is one of the ones who had a variant rule for this for stunts. Because that's well and good if you're like a caster, and most things in 5th ed are casters these days. But what do you do in the event that it is like you're a fighter? And he came up with this idea. It doesn't work if you have any battle masters in game, because it basically turns every fighty into a battle master. But as you get stunt dice. I think you get a number of stunt dice equal to your hit dice or your level, which if you're doing something ridiculous, you can expend one of them to make an additional factor. Like, okay, I want to jump between these buildings and I want to stab him and pin him to the wall. And it's like, okay, according to the rules, are you stabbing him or pinning him to the wall? I'm gonna spend a stunt dice. I'm gonna do both. I'm awesome. All right, fair enough. I mean, you're a level 20 fighter. You're literally Aragorn. Aragorn is able to deflect weapons in midair and break his toe. You know, that's how he spent the hit dice. He kicked something and broke his toe.
Ah, that's what happened.
Yeah, he got that hit dice spent. So, and like, or you can allow, like, yeah, I mean, theoretically, you just got to be balanced with it. You could allow fighters to heal themselves in the middle of battle by, using second wind, charging it with hit dice, maybe. I don't know. James, what's up?
I was always thinking that, hit dice could also be used, like, if you're trying to do a stunt thing like that, you make it represent kind of overexertion. Use it as almost like a damage type against the because it's going to be pretty set between characters, right? So, if you're a barbarian, right, and you want to do a stunty thing, cool. You take 1d12 damage, you can do it. And that way you might get lucky, you might not get lucky, but it also means that you've got this, it's not just like you can only do it like 4 times, right? So you've got that, you're literally rolling the dice. Maybe you can leap over that thing and strike at that enemy one more time, but maybe you're taking yourself too far, and that muscle snaps and you're like down 12 hit points, and you're like, oof, right? But you might get one, and it's just like, it worked out well. Congratulations, you got a bit more crazy activity you can kind of get into, like a bit more higher octane, I guess.
I've developed a new class that is in test development. It never got to be played yet, so the next time I run a homebrew game, somebody has to play it. But I've created basically what is like an inverted barbarian, or a converse barbarian. Like, they're a barbarian tank, the warden guardian type of concept. And the entire mechanics for this class functions on exhaustion levels.
Okay. Because
you're basically, what's that show with, like, the person who's babysitting and, like, the baby keeps getting in all these troubles, and like one of those, like, cartoons, right?
I was just thinking that short from the or like the side plot in The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Basically like that type of thing, right? So it like, you get a bunch of extra actions, and you're basically powered by exhaustion. It's a pretty cool idea. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. What's up, Robin?
So, I think that's a great explanation of, like, bending the rules, but I'm a new DM and I'm not necessarily comfortable with, like, homebrewing my own stuff. What are some tools that I have available to use to help me create my own campaign?
Thank you very much. All right, so the best tools that I have found personally, There are a couple right off the top. Do you want digital or analog tools?
Both.
Okay. Tool number 1, lined post-it notes. Watch this. Ready? Look, I've created a battle grid, or I have created an initiative chart. Normally slightly less like that, more like that. But like I've created an initiative grid. You can buy these at dollar stores. I also have a bunch of small notebooks that are like basically like just like cashier notebooks, but they're lined. And I use those as initiative too. And then you have histories of initiative, which is nice. Coins on the table are great. Anything that, you know, we'll get into set dressing later. Digital tools. My favorite one is if you're just getting going, a calculator. Also, did you know that if you don't have very many dice, if you go to Google or your browser and type 5d6 in right now, it'll just automatically roll it for you. You don't even have to type roll 5d6 or dice 5d6 anymore. You just type 5d6 and it does it. Huh. Do you know how often I use that in D&D? All the time. I ain't got time to roll dice.
Huh, that's cool. 22.
Note paper, notepads, post-it notes, index cards. Index cards are, you can use index cards to start training yourself to be a better storyteller through something I learned from my days in Vampire the Masquerade called sense memory, where you spend an afternoon writing down all of the senses, all of the physical sensations, smells, tastes, etc. that you can think of on index cards. And you put them in a Rolodex, if you have a Rolodex, or you put them in a stack if you have a stack. Everyone has a stack. And you use it to keep an idea of like, okay, describe what velvet tastes like. Or describe the smell of this. And then you've got these memories on index cards that you can reference. Pretty handy, if that's what you're into. But if you're, let's go digital. So what's everybody's favorite thing? I would say one-page dungeon. One-page dungeon is my personal favorite when I have to run something. So if you go to Google and type in, is it one-page dungeon? Yep, one-page dungeon. It's on itch.io. It's wataboo.itch.io, and what it is it is a one-page dungeon with a bunch of things that some guy has made into a generator. It is infinitely refreshable. It even names it. I have just pulled up the Pyramid of the Moon. For a millennium, the pyramid was considered lost. Recently, an undead hydra has made its home here. The pyramid is home to a rare species of herb. That's 3 sessions, if I need it. Right there. It also has like, oh, a young human checking out the contents of a strongbox in room 2. It has everything numbered. It has like, I use this for like frickin' I've used this on stream before when I was like, oh, they're going into this place and I didn't have time to prepare what it looks like mentally. Like I know the plot, I know the story, I know the monsters. I didn't have time to map it very well. It also gives you maps, like printable maps that you can take the key off of. It's fantastic. I love it. FantasyNameGenerator.com showed up because it is the most useful site on the internet.
Tabletop audio.
Tabletop audio. If you're more advanced and you want to start putting in actual like music and stuff, let me give you an example of what you can do with tabletop audio. Okay, we are not paid by tabletop audio. In fact, I pay them I pay yearly at this point because I use them so much. But I'm gonna open the you know what? Fog of War. Oh, this is a new one. Nice. So
also, for those that are wondering, I am putting all of the websites that we talk about in the resource assets page on our Discord. So if you're wondering and are not watching the chat or something and miss a link, I am copying that and putting it in our resources page on Discord.
That one-page dungeon, like holy crap! Because it gives you a title and then it gives you a short little sub thing. So like, I refreshed it to Plague Moon Dungeon. For many years, the dungeon was considered lost. Currently, it is badly infested by owls.
Yeah, and
you know what that is? That's a freaking story prompt.
I love it. It's beautiful.
Use this to create one-shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You can print it.
Provides you the start of an idea. Why is it infested by owls? Why is it lost?
Right-click on the map and see all the options you can get too.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, no, this program's amazing. So this is
Rooms. Ooh.
so if you're listening right now, this is Fog of War. It's a song from Tabletop Audio. Never underestimate the power of some audio. Have it quietly in the background, like enough the players can hear it, but not that it overwhelms. So Tabletop Audio is a site that does 10-minute-ish long loops of music, and it's everything from like, so there's that. Let's do a summoning circle. You ready?
Also, thank you already to Rizelta for pinning those websites.
Thank
on the
you.
page,
Or
too.
maybe we're in a village. Ooh, this is a new one. It's one dude. Tim has been putting these out forever. He does amazing work. You also can access sound pads there. It's all for free.
Oh yeah, the sound
if
pads
you-
are fantastic.
If you back them on Tabletop Audio, you get access to tracks that are with and without ambience. So like some of this music is way better just as music. If you want to have like, I have them saved as multiple files for when I run games. So like I want to have just the tavern music, but I just want the music because it's got like kind of a Witcher vibe or something like that. But like if I'm like, oh look, a city background sound.
Well, and a lot of those you can bookmark individually too. And like that's one of the ideal things is having bookmarking a bunch of stuff. And you know what? Put a folder in your bookmarks and name it with your game's name.
Exactly.
Put subfolders in for each chapter or whatever that you're on. Resave bookmarks to each one so you don't have to go searching for them again.
It's time to roll initiative.
Or having intro.
I played a
music.
roll initiative sound effect.
Oh, okay.
But like having a certain set of music at the start of every game can be also a good way of getting people to sink in, right? Like
It totally can. Play the
here.
opening song of your game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there is a caveat to that. Don't play the exact same song for every combat, because this is actually from the Vampire the Masquerade Storyteller's Handbook. Oh, Slipknot again. Reginald, pass me the silver bullets. There are werewolves coming. Like, don't be predictable, like, in-game.
That's good.
Unless it...
And something
Yeah.
small that can even make your game just that little bit more atmospheric even. If you're playing in person, set dress it a little. Get some of those like little battery operated candles. Put fairy
Don't
lights
use-
around the room.
Don't use real candles unless you can trust your players. I've had players that literally have burned themselves or have ruined my table by playing with wax because they couldn't stop touching the wax.
Oh no.
So be careful with that. Also, watch out for scented things. Be sure that everyone is okay with scent. A lot of people have allergies, and a lot of people don't know they have allergies until they're trapped in a room with a bunch of people. Also, hey guys, if we're actually sitting at a table, what's number one rule for that day?
no chips.
Bathe.
Oh yeah, that one.
Wear deodorant.
You wouldn't think this would have to be said. Wear deodorant or whatever makes you not smell, and bathe and wash your clothes. This is something I have done hygiene panels at anime conventions, and people seem to not understand this. Bathe. If you didn't bathe, or if you didn't bathe this morning, do not have gone to the gym before game.
If you're gonna be close to people, make sure you've showered.
Yeah, if you're going to be close to people, make sure they want to be close to you.
Also,
Also-
if you're gonna do that, if you're the type of person who wears a lot of body spray, aftershave, perfume, whatever, maybe lay off of it that night. Or spritz a little in front of you and walk through it. Don't spray it on yourself. Because guaranteed in a small room, you're going to be overpowering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't
Also,
roll
And there's
player.
nothing worse than making your fellow players sick because you're too strong smelling in
Well, especially when it's
either
in
a
a-
pleasant or unpleasant direction.
Like in a room that, because it gets warm in there too. So you've got like warm atmosphere that's just like, and like the scent overpowering. And for me, that's something that can make me really nauseous.
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I often find at the end of games, like I'm a little floaty headed, and if I have to like deal with that, it's even worse. Robin, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say it's a good point brought up by Miss Scarlet Knits in the Twitch chat, is that if you're not doing a stream game and you're doing a home game with friends, you can play whatever like soundtracks you want from your favorite movies, or go onto YouTube and search,
Oh, everything's available on
fantasy
YouTube.
woods and come up with like a 10-hour
Yeah.
like
If you're
loops
not
or-
trying to make money off of it.
Yeah.
You can
Not
play
being
whatever
publicly
the-
broadcast to the internet. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. It's there is nothing as fun or exciting as running a Star Wars role-playing game and having the Star Wars music playing. Okay? There is not a single person that doesn't feel hype when you get those 4 songs going. You know which 4. If you're playing a Jedi and Duel of the Fate starts playing, you are hyped. You are
for
not
a while
on my,
there.
my
You
screen.
could get these apps that turned your phone into a lightsaber or gave you all these like droid sounds.
Yeah.
We can't use them on stream. But you know what was really, really fun playing Star Wars was if you
Yeah.
had an astromech, having the R2-D2 soundboard on your phone and then having a conversation with your droid.
Yeah, Christine did that all the time when we were playing.
It was
and
so good.
I had my
That's
lightsaber out
amazing.
for my lightsaber fights because they actually had the app where it responds to the gyroscope in your phone.
Oh, I remember
So-
that app. I
Wow.
played with it all the time.
I
Those
played
are
with it all the time, but
great.
literally while I was my character, I'm like, ah, it was so good. Or get an animal noise gun. Hold on.
Yeah, you and that gun.
I love
That
that
thing's
gun.
amazing.
I
That was
love
a
I don't know
dollar
where
store
it is
buy.
right now. I found the shark though.
Oh. Yeah.
I get it. Oh, it's right here. Dollar store. is
Charlie
the number one.
hates that thing, by the way.
See, I love that for when when we did in-person games, and I was like, I'm a bear now. Bear noise.
Bear noise. What other digital
Charlie's there, he
tools?
tries to eat it.
It's true. What other digital tools do y'all like? So besides like Google Drive, Google Sheets, all of those. Google Forms is the best way to ask your characters for background stories. Fight me.
Oh yeah.
Because you just make a quiz and have them pop it in. Like I do that for most of my games now where I'm like, what's your name? What's your character's name? Is that your real name? What's your backstory? And you can limit how big or you can choose how much they can give you by the size of the input. It's great. Tosh.
I was gonna say it's not. I don't know if it's a tool. I posted a link to like a website that has a whole bunch of articles on basically world building and how to write a one shot and kind of
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And there's just tons of good articles on that link.
Fair enough. YouTube is another huge one as well. Like if you're not sure how to run games, somebody is going to tell you about how to do that. I've been bouncing this around for a while, but one of the things I'm going to be doing in May is I'm going to start releasing my how-to series because I'm going to run one-on-ones with tips and tricks like this, just talking at you. So hey, please like and subscribe and smash that bell. Bing.
I love Miss Scarlet and its in-person tip: chocolate coins for inspiration. Reward with chocolate. Eat when used.
Yeah,
yes.
I love that.
That's
Yeah,
adorable.
I'm just like, that means you have to use your inspiration soon so it doesn't
So you
melt.
get the chocolate.
Yeah, you also
So-
want it.
Oh.
Yeah, well,
I had it's one physical tool that was a lot of fun.
What's
A
that?
timer.
timers are great. Or hourglasses or minute or hourglasses. You can get those at dollar stores. So
Yep.
good.
I remember having a fun sci-fi game where I set up a timer and it's just and I just started it down. It's and then I announced that a reactor was overloading, and they're like, nothing made players play faster than that.
Hats are great. Hats
yeah.
are great.
Mm.
What else is good? Lighting. Never underestimate the power of lighting in your space. If you have a dimmable chandelier, don't swing on it. I always would put my lighting at 70% when I would run games, particularly World of Darkness games. Absolutely. Dim the lights. Put on some colored lights. Put some red bulbs and blue bulbs up. Things like that. You can buy, by the way, you can get party bulbs at Walmart or wherever for $4 or $5. They're LEDs now. They last forever. You can do a lot of cool stuff. Lighting is fantastic. Just make sure it's not so dark they can't read or that they'll fall asleep. Both of which I have had happen before. So plan accordingly. Amy.
So these are a lot of really, really cool tips and tricks and things, but also I feel like it's worth reminding that if you're new to this, if you're about to run your first game, you don't need this.
You don't need all this.
Need it. You don't need any of this. All you need is dice, which you can use a digital thing if you don't have physical dice yourself. You need a book, I guess,
You need
probably.
an idea and some people who are willing to show up at the right time.
Yeah.
And a few pencils and some paper.
Yeah. All this stuff is so cool and really helps, and is stuff that you may want to start adding in a piece by piece so you don't get overwhelmed with it, because when you're starting, I've only run a few games, but even so, it gets overwhelming. Time seems to dilate.
This is such a good point.
You end up
don't let
talking.
yourself get-
It's like
yeah.
I find myself talking so much faster because I'm getting nervous, and I feel, and then like I get like, oh god, like I need to get all this information out at once. It's like, no, take a breath, slow down. It'll be better for your communication. It'll help you think things through more clearly. Like you can take as much time as you need before you start adding cool stuff in.
And if you like forget something and your players are doing something else, they don't know. So just like you can just like be like, yeah, that's how it was supposed to go. Obviously, like your players don't know when you forget something or if you screw something up or if something goes weird. Like they just think it's all part of the plan. So you don't worry too much about it.
Yeah. Also, if you get to the spot where you're like, well, shit, I didn't think we'd get this far. You're friends, or you should be at least. Go, all right, guys, well, you got ahead of me here, so give me 5, go take a bathroom break, refresh your drinks, blah, 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 come back and we'll keep going.
You'd never be afraid to ask for time.
That's a good point too. Yeah. Like be aware of like the actual like time constraints of your players too. Like if you're in charge of running the game, make sure you're not running too far over if people have somewhere to go, or making sure that you're being aware of like, do people need a bathroom break? Like, especially if your friends are very like shy and they're not going to ask for that, make sure you're kind of paying attention to the practical concerns.
Absolutely. So we've got about 12 minutes left before the end of the panel. So I would like it if we could rapid fire, like what are your favorite like pieces of advice, as quick as possible, little ones. I'll give you an example. So end on cliffhangers. Even if it means you end 5 minutes earlier than you wanted to, or 10 minutes earlier, end on a cliffhanger so people are talking. If they're talking about your game, you're doing it right.
Relax and have fun. If you're having fun, they'll probably have fun.
Players cool items that they want to use, and then it really like builds the world immersion because they're like, oh, I just got this thing, I want to use this thing, it's part of my character now.
Remember, we're not perfect, we're all human, so you don't have to get it right. As Kelly said, this is not your final draft, this is your first draft, so you know, take a breath, you'll do great. It's you're there to have fun with your friends, and if your friends are that judgmental, maybe get some other friends, because that's not what friends do.
Remember that no D&D is no role playing is better than bad role playing.
Try to spotlight everyone if you can. Like, so, you know, put something in there for every player. If there's going to be a swashbuckler in your group, put that, you know, up story in there and have a chandelier hanging around, right? Like, try to give everyone something where they some moment they can turn around and say, I was freaking awesome right there. That'll be something to carry home.
And 100%, like again, on that shy player thing, if you've got a player who's not going to like put themselves in there, make sure you are accommodating for some of the players who are very like overzealous and will like do every action in every encounter. It's like, well, how about, do you have anything you want to do?
Fair. Be communicative. The fundamental element of role-playing games is communication at the table, and communication between you. If you're not communicating with your players, and you are not making sure that you're all communicating together, you're not actually playing the game. And that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind, because you can't run a game without communication. That's kind of the whole language thing. Someone brought up the, what about killing off characters, do's and don'ts? Don't punk a character unless everyone agrees to it. That's not saying that, like, don't kill anybody unless someone agrees to it, but make it cool. You know, nobody wants to slip in the bathtub and die in game unless the player thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah, so get to know your players, and
warn them if they're about to do something really stupid.
Yeah. Just be like,
so unless
hey,
it's really, really earned, there's a good chance nobody wants their character to die.
And Robin, you brought up something good in our private chat just here about how we have an entire panel tonight about death and grief in games. That's a great place to come and ask this. That's at 9 o'clock tonight. So in about 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes.
I just put that as a suggestion because that's a big question for the last 9 minutes of our panel. So that might be a good question to bring to the I want to say death, grief, and taxes, but it's not taxes.
There might be taxes.
Death, Love, and Robots?
It is.
I don't think it's that either.
Death is a rough one in game to really go over too, because and it feels kind of hypocritical for me saying this, because there's a lot more plot armor on Dork Tales than there is in other places, because we're a small stream and art is expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
If we were Critical Role and had like the Critical Role money, then I could kill people off a lot more often. We could just buy more art.
And also establish ahead of time, like, do your characters want a game where they can die, or do they want a game where that's not something they really have to worry about? They can just go full hog and like do whatever they want to do and have fun with it.
There are worse things than death.
I'd say
Yeah, I
yes. A session 0 is like, as a DM, I think that's the best thing that you should always be doing
Hey, Robin,
with your players.
What's a session 0, since it hasn't been stated?
Session 0 is the game before the game. Well, the talk before the game, where you sit down with your players and discuss the game that you're having, your lines and boundaries, and your character potentials, and you talk about the game that you want to have with your players. And it is a fantastic tool to have the game that you want with yourself as a player and yourself as a DM, and everyone's wanting to have fun. So, Session 0 is a great way to be communicative. That's a word I can say.
It's true. So you want to have a session 0 so that you don't get a bunch of this. All right, cool, guys. So I'm running a space game. We're all going to play a game in space. What are everybody's character concepts?
Han Solo.
I mean, that's fair. Anybody else want to be Han Solo?
Han Solo.
We got 2 Han Solos.
I was gonna go with with Riker.
Okay, so now you've immediately got space smuggler and space satyr maniac communist. Okay.
Can I be the ship? I'm going to be the ship.
You joke, but Lasers and Feelings is coming to Dork Tales' YouTube from our Wava series. We had someone who played the ship, and that was an interesting game because it did change the fundamental balance of the game, because one person was the ship, but there was a pilot. But at the end of the day, the ship was like, well, I'm not going to do what you say because you're just my pilot. And it was like, what? So you got to be careful about this stuff. And that's what conversations are about, because you don't want to have a game where it's like, once upon a time, I was preparing to run a werewolf game. I can do this in 30 seconds. I was going to run a werewolf game. It was going to be a small town horror game where a bunch of people were werewolves and were trying to solve supernatural mysteries. And I invited one friend who had never really played role-playing games, because this was in my whole proselytizing era where I was trying to convert people. And he goes, I want to play a werewolf stand-up comedian. And I was like, okay, I can see how this could be cool. No, he wanted to play it like Carrot Top. Like a prop comic who never got upset and was just like, he just wanted to play like it was bad. And it wasn't the tone that the game needed and that I wanted. I think Tasha was supposed to be in that game.
Oh yeah. So okay, so on that point, like being aware of like what the tone is that A, you want to run, and B, your players want to play, and like finding a compromise and being responsible for keeping that consistent.
And be aware of your player relationships. That's a big one. If you have 2 people in game that hate each other, don't do it. Or be mindful of it. Or if you have 2 people,
or if they have 2 different playing styles, if you have one person who's a rules lawyer and one person who hates rules lawyering, don't put them in the same game.
Exactly. Right? Or talk about it first. There's a bunch of other stuff. In the next panel, we're going to be talking about a natural outgrowth of this. Our next panel is Love, Sex, and Consent in Role-Playing Games, where we talk about romantic relationships in role-playing games. And that's a big one. Because role-playing is, if you're doing it, you're acting. And acting has this thing in it called bleed. Any type of character work has bleed. And basically what that means is your things bleed over from your performance. You ever wonder why so many actors have hookups with their co-stars and stuff after sex scenes? Yeah, it's because sometimes things go funky where they aren't supposed to, because you're just supposed to be acting. And I've had that happen where people have been really angry or really sexy or really weird at each other because of things that happen in games, where they're like, oh, you're a dishonest person because you stole from me. It was a game, and it was a heist game where we were all trying to steal from each other, my friend. Right? What about players who are couples? that should be brought up in the next one, I think, even more. I'd say that make sure it's a stable relationship. I would not invite a new couple into a game. On stream, absolutely not. But off stream, if it was a long running thing I was playing, like, oh, I'm gonna run this game for like 3 years. I personally would be like, let's make sure you guys can survive 2 months. Because that's
get them to communicate ahead of time whether they're okay with their characters flirting or having a relationship with another character in game or not okay.
Yeah, we'll roll this all up into the next panel. There's gonna be a lot of great stuff in that one. All right, so we've got about 2 minutes left on the clock. Any last words from everybody? Let's go. What do we got? So breathe. You've got this. You're very attractive. I'm not hitting on you. I'm just trying to raise your confidence because you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Any last things that people are thinking? Anything that fell out of your head as we were going through? Oh, steal constantly. One of the hardest things for someone who's trying to create stories is trying to create an original story. There are no original stories. They've all been told. So, when they were told by stealing bits from other stories. See Star Wars. Amy.
I'd say don't try and force yourself to run something that you're not excited about. Like, especially if you have an idea, just go for it. Just, like, even if you think it might be kind of strange, just be like, you know what? I'll pitch it. We'll see where it goes. Because maybe you have a group of players or characters that you really want to see them do something. And you're like, here, please, my offering.
Natasha.
When in doubt, choose the option that makes the game more fun. If it's like, oh, well, this could happen or this could not happen, and then you just be doing the same thing, it's like, choose the option that's more interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anybody else? Because I've got one to close us on, but anybody else have one to toss in? All right. So in that case, the number one thing that I want to say on the way out, I say number one a lot, apparently. Remember that you have a seat at the table too. It's your job to make it fun for everybody. And you're a person too. And it's really hard to remember that in the heat of the moment when you're trying to be, the antagonist, the monsters, and everything else. It's really easy to think that you don't count. And if you're not having fun, you're not going to finish running the game. You're going to quit. Don't quit. Give your players and yourself the game that you want. By communicating. Anyway, that's what I got. So, folks, that's going to be the first of our 18 panels and events that we have this weekend. Be sure to stick around. In about 15 minutes, we're going to have our second panel, which is love, sex, and consent in role-playing games. And then at 9 o'clock, we have grief and death in tabletop RPGs. So I hope you stick around for that and check out the full schedule. It is fantastic. You can find it on all of our social media. With that, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Let's do a quick circle out. Amy, go. Where can we find you? Who are you?
Hi, I am Amy, and you can find me at twitch.tv/paradoxicalghoul. Yes, or here in several games. Well, right now I think I'm in 2. But yeah.
It's true. All right. James.
I'm James. You can find me here or occasionally on Precarious's channel. Yeah, that's pretty much me.
Nice. Tasha.
I am Natasha. You can find me here on Twitch and all over the internet at Natasha Tuskovich Designs, where I stream co-working, fashion, art, and design.
Nice. All right. Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin. You can find me usually here on Dork Tales, but also on my hoping to be more frequent channel, Second Gen Gamer, on Twitch. Thanks for having me. Also, thanks Stack Rules for the tip right as you were doing your little outro thing. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
thank you so much. And Christine.
Hello, I'm Christine. Thank you so much for being here. You can find me over on twitch.tv/Lady Liliana as well, and all of my socials are in the same name category, but also regularly on Dork Tales.
Nice. And as always, I've been Kelly, and I'll see you next time here at DorkX. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Bye, everybody.